And here we go. It's Weather and Ag in Focus on this fabulous Monday. Okay, look, all of you are thinking, well, it's a little warm out there. We were going to get her back up to the 90-degree mark. But instead, we thought we'd do that right here in the WDAY Studios building. She was a bit on the warm side. I'm glad I came in after AC has been fixed. Addison, are you okay? Is it a little PTSD for you today about the heat wave we're having indoors?
Warm is an understatement. My shirt is wet. The chair I'm sitting in is wet. It's miserable in here. This wouldn't happen if it was the middle of December. This wouldn't have been a problem. I once again continue my hateful tirade. I hate hot weather. I hate the summer.
You're not wrong. I would say that right now, as far as weather is concerned, this is maybe not our most upstanding part of the year, although there are some lake lovers who are like, yeah, this is fantastic. I did look at some crop, though, as I was coming into Fargo earlier today, and this is tough on it. I mean, it's not just warm, but the wind just tends to dry her out. And we're in an area that's not great.
No. And when was the last time it rained? It's been a while, hasn't it?
I should probably be better at thinking about when was the last time that it rained. But frankly, I got a lot of other things going on in my head, so I don't remember. But if there is one of those very, very energetic listeners who remembers when was the last time it rained, especially in the north half of Cass County, I would ask you to give us a call on the JLA Insurance phone line, 701-293-9000. It's brought to us by Nate Thorsrud of JLA Insurance. If you have questions about crop insurance, he'd be your guy, and any other insurances for that matter. But meanwhile, I love it when you call, and you can visit with us here at the studio, 701-293-9000. Again, the JLA Insurance phone line. You could also be watching on the Lighthouse Commodities live stream. That brings us to Facebook, YouTube, Acres TV, and Lighthouse Commodities. They want to help you when it comes to marketing your grain in the better ways that are available. And I really emphasize Lighthouse Commodities and other marketing plans this year. I just came from the Bell Bank Ag Views Live. Bell Bank puts out a quarterly newsletter on ag news, and we visited a week ago with Lynn Paulson, Senior Vice President of Lending at Bell Bank. And Lynn talked about all the trends that are going on in banking. You know, as a guy who's got 40, 45 years of banking experience, he's seen and heard a lot. And some of the things that I saw this morning was when he and Dr. David Cole, Professor Emeritus of Virginia Tech, were sharing what they see going on as far as trends, not only in ag, but they also focus pretty heavily on energy. Some of the things that they talked about. First of all, we have a very strong secondary equipment market at this point, which some may be surprised to see. But farmers are holding on to equipment longer, and when they do sell, it's still moving at a strong price. An interesting comment over the weekend, and that was coming from a service manager for a brand name dealership out in Indiana, and his son works for a fuel distribution company. And he asked me, do you have farmers who are using DEF, that diesel efficiency fluid, as a source of nitrogen in their corn? Because we're seeing more and more of that over here. So there's an interesting comparison. If we actually were to break down like the actual N on a per acre basis, what would you be delivering if you were using DEF? Not going to lie, I really haven't taken time to do the math on that so I could look at actual N and make a comparison for a corn crop. Is it cheaper than what we see going on right now in the overall fertilizer market that folks would have a question or a concern about? Not sure. Some of the other things that we talked about this morning at Bell Bank's Ag Views Live had to do with, you know, the whole closure, open closure, et cetera, that's going on with the Strait of Hormuz. And what is happening over there is you're seeing people figuring out a lot of workarounds. I'd read in the Van Trump report earlier this morning that there's a whole lot of other pipeline discussions happening that could bypass that strait and about 6 other potential choke points on the earth, because there are more concerns with what's happening politically and with military action in a variety of areas. So watching what's changing globally with energy has been a lot as of late. So we'll see what's happened. We have some countries that have really doubled down in what they are choosing to do when it comes to building pipelines, making some investments in other areas around the globe. The BRIC countries, when you think about like Brazil and some of those that are part of that BRIC nation segment, and how they're making investments in places like South America or other areas where maybe we as the U.S. have pulled out of. How does that affect farming? One of the best questions asked by the audience today was, what would corn prices look like if we did not have ethanol? And the general feeling from both Lynn Paulson as well as Dr. David Cole was that number would definitely have a 2 in front of it as we look at the overall corn market. So great questions. Also touched on what's going on with AI when it comes to farming, which, let's face it, it's here. It's not leaving. And are we using it in the best ways possible? So let's talk about some other things that we maybe should be using in the best way possible. As I mentioned earlier, and certainly Addison asked that question, and we're still looking for that answer. When was the last time it rained? You haven't had to wash your car in a while, Addison, so maybe it's been longer than we anticipate.
If I went and got a car wash today, it will rain tomorrow.
I would like you to do that and then drive around my neighborhood, please.
I'll do it for $5.
I'll give you 10 if it rains.
Oh, that covers the car wash. Perfect.
So there we are.
It's just like clockwork. I know people make the joke, but it's real. It really happens.
Only to you, I might add.
Only to me.
So basically, you and I just became tradio.
Yeah.
What we just did. Okay, so with this dry weather, what's that doing to the U.S. Drought Monitor? As we've watched some areas increasing from abnormally dry to moderate drought, et cetera, and we do see a bubble on the eastern side of North Dakota on the Red River Valley, kind of east central, where we are seeing that there is an increase on the drought monitor. And how does that get reported? As we've mentioned before, many of you can be drought monitor reporters. Their actual name is a Condition Monitoring Observer report. And you go online. It's actually very much a multi-question or multiple answer question to start out with, right? You get to choose some things, but then you're asked to fill in some deeper answers about moisture levels in the area and impacts of them. Now, the county agents across the state are really some of the folks that are most involved with making sure that we know what's happening for the drought monitor, right? They're the ones who are most in tune to it. And then all of those answers plus independent reporters filtered together, and it's reviewed by state climatologist Daryl Richardson. And Daryl has some tips that if you're going to be part of giving the specifics for the drought monitor, consider adding better information than just, oh, it's the worst I've ever seen. How about things like, I had to cut my wheat for hay because I'm not getting a crop. My stock ponds are completely dried up. I only got one cutting of hay this year. Or in other areas, the top 2 inches is dry and powdery and underneath is mud and muck, and we're having trouble traversing fields when it comes to pulling equipment through there. So those types of things can really help make more of an impact and give better information. Now, pictures can also help. He said he's actually gotten pictures of kochia that's dying due to it being dry. You guys, if kochia's drying, holy cow. I mean, it's like the apocalypse. Nothing kills kochia that easily.
Have you been outside in the last week? It is the apocalypse.
I have been outside.
It's a miracle you survived.
I should have brought some ice packs for you so you can tuck them into your shirt like race car drivers
I almost went home over my lunch break to grab a tub of ice cream to just to just hold.
I'm going to introduce our guest for today's show as well. And he and I both said we grew up in houses without air conditioning. And Addison, I don't think that was a life build for you.
Unless I was at Grandma's. Grandma had an air conditioner, but Grandma does not like to run the air conditioner.
My grandparents, when they moved to town, they did have air conditioning. It was the world's largest window air conditioner, and it was in the window of what Grandpa called his office. And because it would be loud, he would close the door. So just that room you could hang beef in just that particular room. It was maybe not the best plan that Grandpa ever had, but hey, I was too loud to have lunch. We had to do something. I get it.
That's really funny.
Stick with me for hot weather tips. All right, but also stick with me and our guest. I will be introducing Dave Majkrzak. He was an engineer for the Steiger Tractor Company here in Fargo, but also is now a member of the Steiger Heritage Club. And Steiger's a featured tractor at the Western Minnesota Steam Threshers reunion coming up in Rolog over Labor Day. What an exciting time for Steiger. They are a regionally well-known, developed right here tractor, now going to be featured on the Tractor Hill out at Rolog coming up. So we'll talk to Dave and all of the wonderful things that he brought to show us when we return. This is Ag Director Bridgette Readel here for Weather and Ag in Focus today. And many of you know, in my older age, I have become quite the machinery nerd. I never thought I would pay this much attention to tractors, and now it tells me I should have paid a lot more attention when I was younger. But that was always what my brothers did. Now I have the opportunity to not only talk to folks who write books, but have been the hands-on, behind the scenes when it came to building tractors. And as I mentioned earlier, Steiger, what a name in this region. They are, in my book, yes, maybe the Wagner came first, but the Steiger really led the way in four-wheel drive tractor power. And we are fortunate to have in studio with me today Dave Majkrzak, who was an engineer for Steiger throughout those years. So, Dave, you were not with the Barn series out in Red Lake Falls, correct? You worked for Steiger when they came to Fargo.
Yes, that is correct. I joined Steiger in June of 1974, the Barn series, and I think they moved to Fargo in 1969, somewhere in there.
So was this like first job out of college?
It was. I was born and raised on a farm in the Grand Forks, Thompson, North Dakota area, and first job out of college, and really great interviewing those years. I had lots of job opportunities, and I was thankful to be able to stay in the area and go with an ag company.
That was really the golden age of farm equipment in this region. I mean, so I graduated from NDSU in December of 1996, and that was a time where if we got job interviews, that was huge. Getting the job was just wonderful because we didn't have quite the opportunities. You coming in, were you an ag engineer and the opportunities were pretty big?
I was a mechanical engineer,
Okay.
and I had done pretty well with grade point things. I actually took interview trips. I got tired of taking interview trips. I had 13 job offers,
Wow.
everywhere from Westinghouse nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania to Midland, Texas, several in the Minneapolis area. And my last offer came in from Steiger, and I took it, and I was very happy to stay in the area.
Well, being in the area is one thing. Had you looked ahead at what was going on in the farm equipment business and thought that was an industry that you wanted to continue to be a part of? Or was it just more of, I got the job?
Well, some of each, and being able to stay in the area. I had several offers from the Minneapolis area, and my brother had gone there, and other people obviously clearly do. And I thought, well, if that was to come to pass, so be it. But again, to stay in the area and stay in farm equipment, I had not focused on that necessarily. As mechanical engineers, you come out with a lot of opportunity ahead of you, aerospace, equipment, cars, everything, you name it. When you come out with an ag engineering background, you may be a little more slated to end up in an ag field. Mechanical gives you a little bit broader approach to the industry, but definitely needed in ag as well, of course.
So you get in at Steiger. What is your first assignment, so to speak, and where was the progression from there on your years at Steiger?
Yeah, well, it was interesting because they were growing and they were looking at trying to do some more things. Advanced engineering, what was called at some time. We had current product engineering, and basically the job was to keep the current stuff running and make running changes to that. But what's next? Bigger horsepower. The horsepower race was a really big deal. And so when I first was hired with another project engineer, we worked on a new concept, bigger tractor, which ultimately became the 450 ST Steiger, which I did do later. But it was a 400 horsepower tractor. That got shelved when engineering management got changed, and some of the priorities were changed at that time. So I worked there first, and then did some other things, applied or application engineering things with heating and air conditioning, radiators, cooling, stuff like that. We had some hydraulics overheating problems going on, and lots of things happening.
One of the stories that Margina Steiger Hallstrom has shared with me is that when the cab first went on the Steigers, her dad and brothers, she's Doug's daughter, was very concerned. They were very concerned that farmers weren't going to pay extra money for air conditioning. I don't know. That's a lot of glass that you sit behind. I bet air conditioning became a pretty big focus for farmers.
Well, it really is. And prior to that, of course, just keeping the wind and the cold off, too, and the cool part. I mean, air conditioning is obviously a big deal, but heating and keeping the bugs and the wind and the dirt off you. I drove tractor for many years without air conditioning, and believe me, this type of weather, you're sitting on hot equipment with hot hydraulics and engines all around you. It's just cooking in there, but it was better than being in the open air.
Yes. Yeah, and honestly, I realize there are some folks that go, oh, well, farmers have it so easy now. But with those comfort cabs, we can now spend a fair amount of time in there, and you have a lot less strain on the human body. And that was probably something that factored into the work that you were doing as well when it came to those cabs and those systems.
Well, right, and GPS, for example, these days when we drove, and the farmers I worked with, and especially if you're close to town or close to a road, they wanted the rows straight or the plowing straight, or cultivation straight. It was work. I mean, from one end of the field to the other, just try to mow a lawn and keep it straight. You don't just turn around and go the other way. You got to really, line up and focus. When GPS came in, you just push a button and it drives you to the other end. It took a lot of the work out of driving the tractor from one end to the other. If keeping straight and, of course, not overlapping too much was on your mind, which it should be.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, you came in 1974 into
Correct.
the Steiger brand. And at that point in time, were the Steiger brothers working very closely with those at the plant, or was it sort of separate? The Steiger brothers had been bought out and they didn't have a lot of influence anymore on tractors?
They were on the board of directors and they were around, but
Okay.
It was a whole different management group and responsibility group. I didn't, eventually I met the Steiger brothers, started in 74, but 69 was, we referred to as the 69ers, the people that started right in the beginning. And, they had some history going on, but by the time I got started, we had the influence of Les Melro and Gene Dahl
Oh, yes.
and different managers and people there, plus the engineering team, that was around there was different.
Those are names that are giants in the ag equipment industry when you mention them. And did you have any idea at the time, or even as years went on, how big of a space you were? I mean, you were literally developing an entire segment of the market by bringing out those four-wheel drive tractors. Did you guys have any idea what you were doing and how impactful it was going to be?
I don't think we really did at the time. We again were in a horsepower race, and it was interesting because the competitors in four-wheel drive, John Deere, Case IH, those people, Versatile, we could throw horsepower in, and many times they couldn't even pull their own tillage equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Will Rich and some of the people are making bigger, wider pieces of equipment, and their tillage side of Deere and IH and things, they didn't even have the power really to pull some of their own equipment, which was kind of interesting at the time. So we were in a horsepower race, and we could get ahead in that race because our design was pretty basic. We took basically over-the-road truck engines and transmissions and put them in a frame. We did not design a casting from front to back to include the engine and the transmission and hydraulic drives and things that the traditional two-wheel drive tractors are today. One big
Mm-hmm.
casting, or in the beginning, I should say.
When you mentioned some of those competitors, I have two brothers who still run our family operation, and the brother right after me, his first tractors for horsepower and four-wheel drive that he bought were the Versatiles, because one of the things that he pointed out was it was so easy for him as a farmer to work on himself for maintenance to save costs. The Steigers were in that category too, correct? I mean, you guys were putting in components that were very, very versatile to work with and made it a lot easier on the farmer to work at home as well.
Well, and I think the other real critical thing too is we were using high volume over the road mass produced heavy equipment.
Yeah.
Cat engines.
It was built for that.
Built for that. And to keep up on the ag side, bless their souls, Deere and Case IH and things, trying to develop and be vertically integrated with their own engines and transmissions, whatever. It's tough to be 100% vertically integrated. Nobody really is. You buy tires, you buy starters, you buy things. But, we bought everything, an off-the-road truck engine, not just an engine, was the best one available. High production, high volume. You design a new engine, whether you're Cat, Case, or anybody else, or I should say John Deere, and you put it out in the field, you don't necessarily have the hours of experience and test time. In manufacturing, you can have the perfect design, but if it's not built consistently, and the dealer service and the technician service, if it's not sold properly and cared for properly, it can become a failure. And by taking a high volume, readily available truck engine,
Yep.
for example, putting it with a high volume, readily available transmission, you have a lot of your reliability, in your back pocket. We didn't test that stuff. Caterpillar and Cummins tested that stuff. We were just testing the stuff around it in all reality.
Oh, this is so much fun. Okay, we're visiting with Dave Majkrzak. Dave was an engineer for Steiger. He is part of the Steiger Heritage Club, and that will be the feature. Steiger machinery or Steiger tractors will be the feature at the Steam Threshers reunion in Rolog over Labor Day. So after our bottom of the hour news, we want to talk about some of the things that Dave brought. He has got some outstanding examples of show and tell. So if you haven't tuned into the Lighthouse Commodities live stream, now would be your chance to do it so you can see the things that Dave brought, and we'll return in a moment. Weather and Ag in Focus today. Our guest is David Majkrzak. David was a engineer up at Steiger here in Fargo for many years, and it's like show and tell. Usually I bring all the props with me today. No. Dave brought all the cool things, and Addison's going to make sure to show those on the Lighthouse Commodities live stream. So can we start with the big tractor before we move into some of the smaller things? Which Steiger is it?
Well, that's represented as a Panther, but really that frame, represents the Cougar and the Panther and many different horsepower ranges. That's what we called the big frame at the time of Series 3 tractors. So we basically had two frame sizes. That had the fixed third frame articulation oscillation point, where the other lighter frame tractors had a drag link. Hooking the front frame and the rear frame. But this is a Panther scale model, a 16 scale model, and it's, again, was as we built the Series 3 models, that everything went from 220 horsepower up to 3.25 horsepower with Cat and Cummins different engines.
So is it kind of mind-blowing to know that now if you look at the Case Steigers, the quad tracks, you're at over 700 horsepower on that tractor?
It really is. It really is. Part of my information I brought here too is that I built the ST450, which was the biggest tractor in the Series 3 line. At the time we went and updated the Series 2 line to Series 3. This represents the Series 3 line of tractors that colored in decals and things. And then I built the 450 prototype, which was the 450-470 Cummins KTA engine in the biggest tractor. That was a third frame. It was a bigger frame.
Okay, so that's the big Panther. Is the smaller tractor that you have a Panther as well?
This is a Panther in the 32nd scale and dualed up. So it's really the mini version. Their little company did the serialized numbers of those and the collector's items, and they had gold ones in that particular size for a while. The bigger tractors, it's an all cast iron tractor, and this was over $300 40 years ago. Not sure what they're worth now. They are a collector's item, I understand, although they're not serial numbered or anything. But the Readel line had, done the serial numbered, smaller 32nd.
Those two toy Panthers are the articulating tractors.
Correct.
Was that Steiger's decision to do articulation, or who brought articulation to the market?
Well, it started, I think Wagner pretty much had it. You either turn the axle kind of like a wagon wheel, or you try to turn it like a front steering in a car. Have a steering ends and wheel ends type of thing. The problem is when you get into high horsepower and high loads and heavy bearing loads, articulated payloaders have been around forever. I shouldn't say forever, but they predated, I believe, the tractors. And actually, if you go out to Bonanzaville, you'll see old metal wheel stuff that's articulated as well. So does the method of making the vehicle turn, and did not require, breaking the wheels like a front wheel of a car or something like that, and just front frame, rear frame. The other trick is to have the oscillation between the front end and the rear end. A car frame has four wheels, and the only thing that keeps it on the ground is the suspension up front. But these frames flex and let the front half of the tractor walk over the ground, different from the rear. And so that's the articulation turns the tractor. The oscillation allows the wheels to stay on the ground, front half versus rear half.
So as an engineer, at any point in time, did a manager walk into your office and drop a project on your desk and you thought, no, we're never going to be able to make that work?
Well, yeah, I think we had a few of those over the years. And sales and marketing was always great for coming back with, if you only did this, if you only did that, I could sell X more. And so we were chasing our tail a lot with trying to decide what it is we should build. The horsepower race, we were kind of easy to get ahead in that game because we could just go to Cat or Cummins, and engines were available 700, 800, 900 horsepower at that point still, but obviously typically not in an ag tractor, but we could progress up that ladder pretty easily.
Was there ever discussion about Steiger making implements, or were you very focused on staying with the horsepower or with the tractors?
Well, we made implements. We actually made implements, and interestingly enough, I always said when things were going well, we kept telling ourselves we should only make tractors. And I've often said the closest I want to get to the ground is the drawbar pin and the tires, because you get to this country or that country or this area, and the farmer will say, oh, that piece of your implement works here, but go across the road and it doesn't work.
Sure.
So the tillage and the implement people had a challenge. We only had the drawbar pin and the tires, so to speak, that touched the ground or were associated with, what we were trying to do. So but we did make implements because in the diversification, people would ask, oh, we should make a disc, or we made discs and transport discs and bought companies. But diversification as vertical diversification, vertical integration is a challenge. We made our own drop boxes, and we ultimately got into making transmissions. But when you buy the best that's off the shelf available, you have that advantage. And we did diversify, but when things got busy, we didn't have the time to diversify. So I always said when we had the time to diversify, we didn't have the money. And when we had the money, we didn't have the time. And time and money are interchangeable in a lot of respects, but, it seems like you can't have both.
As a kid who grew up in Wishick, North Dakota, the epitome of equipment in my world is a Steiger pulling a Wishick disc, all built in the region.
Yes.
And the Steigers were heavy enough to pull them.
Yes, absolutely. And again, Will Rich, there are other people in the area too that did a great job, with the folding cultivators and chisel plows and things. But yeah, we had people that come in and ask. We had engine companies. I built Deutz engine prototypes, which is going to hopefully make it out to the Rolog show.
Mm-hmm.
But that was air-cooled, and air-cooled has certain advantages, and Deutz was a world-renowned engine manufacturer. And they proposed to Steiger in '74 that they might be interested in buying tractors from us and wanted us to put engines in. I think their ulterior motive was also to have us build our tractors, which was pretty good success with their engines, and then let us sell them as well. It didn't amount to anything, but we built and tested 2 prototypes. We built 2 prototypes. One got completed in field test. It's got over 5,000 hours on it, and has been used on construction sites in the area, for example, around here. But it was just an example. Komatsu came later. Different transmission people wanted to have a part of our business, different axle people. So we had to, choose wisely.
Absolutely. Before I got so wildly distracted with so many questions, I also heard you say that Deutz, there might be a prototype that shows up out at Rolog as a highlight. Yeah. Are there some other things from the Steiger Heritage Club that you are seeing as highlights that are going to show up out at Rolog this year?
Yes, I think we're going to have some construction equipment out there. Steiger, again, in the diversification effort, we even talked about making rail car movers at one time to move railroad cars on tracks, because we were horsepower and transmissions and things, but we were into forestry for a while. We were into construction equipment, so we modified, made a version of our tractor with for like a logger application with big bars on it and screens and protective glass, things like that. And yes, I think some of those things are out will be out at Rolog. I know, From my perspective, we, those were things we tried and we thought about, but it was the things that were successful that probably mattered. Mm-hmm. The vehicles that we sold a lot of, and there are people that thought we should have, made more construction equipment. I think a lot of people would say opposite. Trying to compete with CAT in that industry, you don't have the dealers and the representation behind it, and it's a challenge to break into industries like that. And, just because you think one day, well, it'd be nice if we could sell a few more tractors. Let's, paint them this color or do this and see if we can sell a few more. And we did. Mm-hmm. We did some of that, but I'm not always sure that was the best choice.
I understand, because you're trying things at that point.
Yes.
What other items do you have? You've got even some photos and so forth as well.
Well, yeah, and I've got a picture here. One of my favorites is a shot of the Steiger ST450 out in the fields of Montana, which was kind of fun. And my SAE, Society of Automotive Engineers, has the standards. That's the initials you see on oil cans and things, and they have an off-highway division group. And so I presented a paper on the ST450 at the Milwaukee show in 1977. Getting to be a few days ago already. But when the tractor was made, and interestingly enough, when I look at the turnaround time for projects now, we started the Tiger 450 in May of 70. Got to make sure I get the dates right here. 77, and had it at the Farm Progress Show 6 months later, an immovable date within 6 months. I mean, we literally started, local Cummins dealer brought a KTA 1150 engine over and sat it on the ground, and we started drawing it up, and we had a running prototype at the Farm Progress Show in 6 months.
Do you think that could happen now?
No. I'm hearing that some of the bigger companies can't make a running change on a production line issue, and it takes 3 years to make
3 years to make that change.
It's gotten to be ridiculous. In fact, one of the criticisms of Steiger had been that we were so willing to change that a lot of times we were making Rembrandts. I mean, the machines going down the line, if we knew we had a problem, we'd fix them on the line. Now, there's some arguments that would say, well, you should make sure the ones in the field are fixed first and all that. And absolutely, you've got to get the ones breaking down in the field. However, it doesn't help you every day to run something down the line that you know is going to fail and have a plan to fix it later either. So we would make change on the line in the early days, and we would jokingly say there kind of no two tractors were the same. There could be Rembrandts.
But I was going to say, there would be people now who are collectors or just very proud of the fact that they have one of those Rembrandts. It's slightly different.
Well, and yes, and again, we're not intentionally trying to make them. We're trying to fix things, but sometimes they would group the change and say, okay, well, let's build them that way till the end of the year and have a model year change.
Sure.
Because parts books and operators manuals and things like that were difficult to keep up. With today's computers and internet and things, it's a whole different story then. But there was a reason to try to hold your changes. But if you knew it was going to fail, and it had been a problem already, we just felt we'd fix it on the line.
So just by sheer luck, we had anticipated when I had my first conversations with Margina with the Steiger Heritage Club, excuse me, that we were going to try to space out yourself, the Audi family from Aberdeen, and then we've also got another gentleman coming, and we wanted to get everybody in nicely spaced out until we got to Labor Day. Well, I already had the Audis from Aberdeen booked, Parker, Kirby, and Greg, but then I got preempted the day that Trump was out in Medora. They're tomorrow. So I get back-to-back days of Steiger, and I would tell you, for me, that's pretty exciting. For you getting ready to go to Rolog as a club, are there some things that you want to make sure people know when they come and that they should be looking for, or should they be contacting you if they have one of those Rembrandts they should be bringing?
Well, and again, I'm fairly new with the activities of the club. I was at Steiger for 8.5 years, and actually I've looked back in my files and done more research and history reminiscing here in the last 6 months than I had done probably in the last 40 years. So I'm catching up. I mean, obviously here in the town area, my dad has owned them, and my brother has owned the red quad tracks and things like that. So, I think it's just a great proud heritage of the Fargo-Moorhead and the Midwest work ethic that we could compete. We had people from all over the world, impressed with our tractors, and we had people from Caterpillar and Cummins and, nationally recognized companies working with us to make it right. We clearly didn't do this all ourselves.
Sure.
When you had a Cat engine, you didn't just put it in. Now, it's interestingly enough, the Steiger brothers started, they took used pieces of equipment.
Okay. They did. They were literally piecing them together.
Yes, they were used pieces of equipment. So when we moved to Fargo, when I think we had Earl Christensen, one of the story goes that he said, I'll sell you tractors, but you got to start putting in new engines and transmissions and axles. Because they were going up, I think, to the Minnesota mines,
yes,
and just getting equipment and putting them together and making something that would work for them. When we moved it to Fargo, and prior to moving to Fargo, they built them with new engines and things. And so you don't just put a Cat engine in and then get the warranty. You must go through their testing and certification process to make sure the engine install is correct. And same thing with Cummins and transmissions and axles. They won't sell it to you if you overrate it and things. And part of what happened over the years too is we were competing with crawler tractors, and there was a time that our salespeople were saying you can put as much weight on our tractor as you could pile on there, and we realized no, you can't do that. And then go down to a super low gear, second or third gear. You wear things out in a hurry.
Steiger owners are loyalists, very much like any other brand, right?
Yes,
they have a strong following, and those folks, especially in the original green livery, they are very, very loyal to that brand.
We had a really good sound product that was fixable. You could get in, a lot of times as far as serviceability, you could literally crawl in the frame and stand inside the frame and service something out, change an oil filter, whatever. We had enough room in there to do that. And again, we were tillage. We were not trying to go into row crop, which was another dream diversification we always wanted to chase. But trying to get down to 60-inch tread settings and get into row crop just squeezed everything left to right. When we made our big 450, we didn't worry about how wide it was. We just wanted to get down the road. We didn't care about the rows.
You and I were talking before we got started today about Lee Clancher.
Yes.
I've interviewed Lee. He is the author of Snoopy and the Spy about the IH 2+2 tractor, and he also has an upcoming book on the Steiger history, and it's quite the tome. It is a very large, you pre-order, it's like 500 pages. It's got everything you ever wanted to know Steiger in it. And one of the things when talking with Lee that he shared is just the fact that there are some of these very unique marketing things that happen with Steiger. Have you ever seen the Steiger Ford pickup that apparently was used by one of the salesmen?
Yeah.
Have we ever found it? I have a picture of it, but I can't find the actual pickup.
We actually had a lime green pickup in engineering for a while. It was our parts runner's pickup. So there were ones in the field. But again, people in the field, we had the red, white, and blue bicentennial painted tractors, and we had pink Panthers. We had a pink painted Panther tractor. And that got sold, and that can be done in paint shops, you know, and done out, so it wasn't necessarily a product that came out of the assembly line.
Sure.
Although my brother, who worked in the paint area at Steiger, would tell you they had way too many color requests that came through. The guy's got 10 tractors, and he'll buy another 10 more if we'll do this or if we'll do that. And a lot of times it involved paint, but we tried to stay away from that. As much as we could.
The Pink Panther. I'm sorry, that maybe shouldn't make me laugh, but now all of a sudden I have the theme song playing in my head. That's not going to go away for a while. Okay, as we wrap up, we probably only have about another minute, a little bit more that we get to talk today, Dave. What didn't we talk about today? And I know there's probably a lot.
Well, I think there's a lot of proud heritage, in the community here for Steiger. The Fargo-Moorhead community and out hundreds of miles should be proud of what's been accomplished here and continues to be proud. The Case IH factory provides a lot of jobs and has done well for the community. And Bobcat, for example, other locally grown companies have been tremendous assets. And I think that, again, representing how Case IH now grew from Steiger and the color and the name, they maintained that and brought it back. And I understand there was some trademark or some rights that would maybe have been changed or lost had they not resurrected and used the Steiger name again. But there's a reason they're putting Steiger on their red tractors.
Absolutely. So. And because that is, if you put Steiger on that tractor, that is an automatic recognition by farmers and by those who use them of horsepower, dependability, a regional brand. All of those things come very quickly.
Reliability, Midwest work ethic, and ability to stand behind and work with them. Farmers are great people, Canadian farmers and Australian farmers. I've traveled the world with Steiger, and it's been great. It's just been wonderful to be in that community.
It's a tractor that'll work as hard as you do.
Yeah, that's true, and harder.
Well, we ran right through a commercial break so we could keep talking, and that's okay. But I look forward to being able to talk more Steigers tomorrow. Again, they'll be with the Audi family from Aberdeen, South Dakota. We're going to talk about their collection that will be coming to the Western Steam Threshers reunion in Rolog over Labor Day. The Jay Thomas Show is coming up next.